So, you write science fiction books. What about science fiction? Why that genre? What is it about it?
It's one of the ones that had the biggest effect on me. I don't really like genres. I mean, they have their uses, but, you know, it's, whether you write science fiction or not depends really on, doesn't depend on who you write, it doesn't depend on what you write, it depends on who you are. You know, if you're H.G. Wells, it's literature. If you're Philip K. Dick, it's science fiction. You know, if you're Kingsley Amis, it's literature, it's fiction, or it's mainstream. If you're Stanisław Lem, it's science fiction.
So you put me on to Ursula Le Guin, and I read an interesting thing by her a while ago. She was saying she gets criticised because her science fiction is not very technical, and she said, well, she's more interested in the developments of what's happening in society. But where your stuff is, you know, more side of it.
I think my stuff's all over the place, really. I mean, I don't think much of my stuff can really be called science fiction. Or it's sort of blends. It's some of it's horror, some of it's science fiction, some of it's fantasy. Or every now and then there'll be a real balls up, and I'll do all three at once. I really think genres it's a useful shorthand, but it's not much more. Because again, if you're there's an American writer called Jonathan Carroll who writes very strange, well, not mainstream books, but they've got a lot of fantasy elements. And one critic said, I think it was in the Times, he said that if Carroll was a South American with three names, he'd be called a magic realist. But since he's an American, he's called a fantasy writer or a horror writer or something like that, because it's a pigeonhole.
Have you read the Douglas Adams, the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective?
No, I haven't read that one.
No, because he's quite funny. He said he invented the genre because he wanted it to be a romance, crime, horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy, whodunit. Because he wanted one section in the bookshop, just with his book.
Yeah.
Which would have been quite good. But, you know, the science fiction is really often, you know, people take the piss out of it as a genre because there is a lot of ridiculous nonsense in the genre, but there's also a lot of great literature. I think you can make that point for any genre you like. There's a lot of dross.
Including the mainstream. There's an awful lot of garbage in the mainstream, I'm sure of it. I haven't actually read the mainstream because there's an awful lot of it, but, you know, take the aforementioned Kingsley Amis. Now, I've only read 2 of his books, so I might be doing him an injustice. One of them is The Green Man, which is a perfectly decent ghost story. You know, it's nothing special, but it's some good light entertainment, very well written. And the other one is The Alteration, which is an alternate world science fiction story, which is a sort of carry-on film's theme about castration.
Right.
It's the Reformation never took place. So Britain's Catholic, and there's a Pope who's a Yorkshireman,
right.
And there's lots of civilized fun had about his being a very bluff, straightforward northerner. And there's also a particularly revolting murder which is carried out by 2 inquisitors called Foote and Redgrave, which is Kingsley Amis's idea of penetrating social satire. And that strikes me as, you know, just somebody slumming. You know, he thinks it would be a rather good idea to do a science fiction book, but he's not really doing anything very original or very new.
Well,
he's just literally slumming.
Can't do any worse than the dross that his son produces generally.
I haven't read anything by his son. I understand that Cronenberg was going to film London Fields, which makes it rather tempting. But I don't know anything about Martin except that he writes some rather uncompromising things about Muslims.
He's one of that crowd.
Yeah.
Dressing it up in kind of...
it's him and McEwan and Rushdie, isn't it? The big 3.
But, no, he's been writing non-fiction lately, which is...
Yeah, I read a wonderful... I haven't read the book, but I read a wonderful review. It's called The Second Plane, and there's a review of it by an American critic in, I think, the New York Times, Michiko Kakutani, I think she's called, and it's a wonderful review. I mean, whether the book's any good or not, she just demolishes it beautifully.
It's good. Sometimes you do like reviews like that. Just
there's nothing more entertaining than a bad review, as long as you agree with it, or at least that you don't like.
But then the thing I was saying about Mark Steele, he did one of his lectures about Byron, and the Edinburgh Review of Books just slaughtered him, and he said it was, this man has plumbed the depths of, humanity and.
About Steele or about Byron?
About Byron.
Oh yeah.
And that's a review worth having. It was the joke.
It's very nice to have good enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can't remember who it was. Somebody said you have to pick your enemies at least as carefully as you pick your friends, and maybe more. What were we on about? The parliamentary reform thing.
Yeah,
Catholics can now be prime minister.
Yeah, it's like science fiction because they're like because Blair said he would modernise the Parliament, and now it's like Blade Runner. But the strange thing is they didn't, like we said, they didn't do anything. All they did was women can wear a skirt, can wear trousers, and men can walk backwards.
Yeah, Black Rod can turn around and walk forwards.
Yeah, which is not a major step forward constitutionally.
No.
And the thing about the Prime Minister can't be a Catholic. Maybe I misunderstood it, but the way that Blair was excusing it, and there was all those rumours that Blair was going to become a Catholic before he finished being Prime Minister. And but then they said, that can't happen because we need to change. There was some excuse about we need to change 100 separate pieces of legislation, and we don't have the parliamentary time. However, an enabling an act can enable anything, and you can. All they have to do is produce one piece of paper, 1 page, repealing. Okay, this section of this act is no longer important. It doesn't work anymore. That doesn't work anymore.
Or produce one big reform act that says this act supersedes all previous acts on this subject.
So,
but they've also found the time to bring in, I don't know how many thousand now it is. I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 new laws criminalising all 2,000 or 3,000 new things.
Yeah. So basically, that statement was complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And,
as you would expect from the Reverend Tony.
But no one actually picked them up on it at all. No one said, unless I completely misunderstood it. But
no, I think the press has better things to do a lot of the time than worry about big things like constitutional reform.
Yeah,
they worry. The national press worries about the day to day, doesn't it? And constitutional reform is not something you can do sort of day to day.
Same problem with global warming.
Yeah, exactly the same problem.
Like when Hollywood tries to make a film about global warming, they have to do it. So what was the one with the disaster?
The Day After Tomorrow, is that one?
Yeah, where it all sort of happens immediately because you need to have that kind of sense of timing with the film. But they can't, do the slow increment.
The thing is, you could do it. You could do it very. I mean, someone like Peter Watkins would do it beautifully because he'd make a mock documentary out of it. And if you're doing a mock documentary, you can. Well, I haven't seen it, but The Age of Stupid.
Yeah.
That's how they did it. They did it as a mockumentary.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be done cinematically.
Strange, because I'm on their mailing list for Age of Stupid, and I met one of them a few years ago, the one Franny Armstrong. And but I can't remember what she looks like, but I'm sure she doesn't remember me because it was very brief at a conference thing. Someone introduced me. But I get these emails now, and it went from, we're a little independent filmmaker to President Obama's showing the thing in the White House, and they're in Vogue all of a sudden. And I can completely understand why they're doing it, because they want to get their point across, but it just seems quite incongruous from one thing to the other. Just from Spanner Films, which was the group that did it, and the one they did about McDonald's, which was brilliant. The two people who did things against McDonald's. Now it's this weird thing. However, I've still not seen it on in the cinema anywhere. I keep getting photos and in the listings, but I've not walked past the cinema.
They did a big thing with it. I've forgotten how they did it. It was after the Financial Times. Do you know about my Financial Times breakthrough?
Yes, that was brilliant.
Right. It was after that, because the Financial Times is basically a publicity stunt for Fanny Armstrong and her crew. So there were sort of people's screenings where everyone just showed up, I think. But I don't know how much money it made, or if it made money, or how many people saw it. But you're right, I haven't seen it anywhere. It's not like bloody Michael Moore or someone, is it?
No.
I mean,
Are you
all over the place.
Are you on their mailing list?
I'm not sure. I think so.
Because there's...
I don't think I am, because I don't remember these emails you're talking about, so I've obviously failed to sign up.
Well, the last one I got was pictures with them in Vogue.
What, Vogue magazine?
Yeah.
I thought you meant they were just in Vogue.
No. No, actually in Vogue magazine. Or Marie... Well, yeah, I'm sure it was Vogue. Marie Claire, Cosmos, so one of these things.
Oh, that's a turn-up.
Yeah.
Nobody phoned me.
You didn't expect that.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. The more people get the message, the better, really. But the trouble with that is it leads to sort of recycling darling, as opposed to real change.
Yeah.
If people think they're recycling and actually it's just being shipped to China in plastic bags.